Hello and welcome back to Climate TV. I'm Eduardo Gonçalves. Today we're joined by Lord Browne, the Executive Chairman of L1 Energy and former CEO of BP. Lord Browne, thank you for joining us. First of all, what does the future of energy look like and what sort of changes do we need to see to really be able to address the climate challenge?
Well, of course, energy, the mix of energies that people consume has always been changing. From the very beginning, from wood to coal, and then coal to oil, and oil to natural gas. A large amount of nuclear power came into play, and of course, very recently, a very important advance in renewable energy, which is broadly carbon-free. So I see a continuous change. I also see a continuous change in the way people demand the amount of energy. Clearly, OECD is becoming more and more efficient and therefore more and more dependent on fewer sources of energy. Electricity is the winner, and green electricity will be the biggest winner.
There's a lot of talk of natural gas being a bridging fuel. Now, how are the fracking and gas industries going to avoid creating potentially billions of dollars worth of stranded assets?
I think the word bridge is an interesting journalistic approach to a problem that is more complicated to solve. Basically, it's taking a greater share of the energy mix because it is lighter in carbon than coal, provided it is both produced correctly with a limited amount of methane leakage and used properly. It's like all energies, the good and the bad come all in one package. So it's there, it's substituting a different form of energy. I expect it'll be there for a very long time. Methane, natural gas, is one of the most stable molecules, hydrocarbon molecules, and there's an awful lot of it in the world. It's sort of infinite amount.
How do you think we can begin to create the low-carbon energy company of the future?
All energy companies are focused, at least they should be, and I believe they are focused on becoming lower carbon. The big question here is, what is the breakthrough we can make with energy which is not based on hydrocarbons? And so is there a major breakthrough in nuclear power, for example? It doesn't look like it at the moment, where you could get much lower cost kilowatt hours from nuclear. Or is there the possibility one day of having fusion as the possibility? All these things would go into the company. But here and now, I think it is a better application of renewable energy and a better application of natural gas. The thing about renewable energy, I believe firmly, is this, that it isn't for everywhere and it isn't for everyone. Much as you'd not, I think, go and explore for oil when you knew there was no oil there, much as you also shouldn't install solar power when the sun doesn't shine very often, or more importantly, you put in windmills where the wind doesn't blow, because then the engines aren't used very often and it's very expensive. So I think these sorts of things are important to consider. It's not for everyone, not for everywhere, but it clearly is working. And in my own experience, I've been running for the last 9 years world's largest renewable energy fund. You can clearly see changes in the way in which the economics of electric power generation are changing as a result of renewables. And that's all for the good. I think there are many more breakthroughs that can take place.
Now, arguably, there's a lot of subsidy in the energy sector. There's some figures that talk about it being around the £12 billion mark in the UK, much of it directed at the fossil fuel industry. To what degree do we need to get a grip on the energy subsidy issue and to begin reforming those subsidies?
Well, I'm not sure that that number's right when it comes to the UK. That's about VAT rebates, and I think that's really a bad way, an incorrect way of looking at things. There certainly are subsidies for energy all over the world, notably in many oil-consuming nations which produce oil, are basically giving away refined products to their populations. Now, they could argue that the populations own the stuff anyway, so it isn't really a subsidy. Setting that to one side, there will always be subsidies. It's up to politicians to put them in the right places. And I feel, in my experience, that subsidies are for development, so continuous development, actually do feather bed an industry. It's better to have subsidies for R&D and for the initial risk-taking that really set up an industry and make it work for the future. And that happened in the semiconductor industry in the US, for example. So I think that's where the right and proper role of governments exists, upfront for R&D and for the initial developments.
Carbon tax is another issue that's talked about quite a lot. In your view, should we be looking at a price on carbon? And if so, should it be a global one or a regional one?
Well, in the end, the way to reduce carbon output is to provide an incentive to reduce it. And carbon pricing is a great way to do it. It's purely theoretical, I think, to think of a global carbon price. I think of it like a global currency. It's ideal, but it doesn't happen. It's tough enough getting a few nations together to do it in Europe. And it took America a long time to sort out its universal commercial code and so forth. So I think that's a bridge too far, but regional pricing for carbon, maybe with interrelationships between the regions, might be something that in the long run one can achieve. I think we're quite a long way away from that, because it does really need a real commitment to reduce carbon, and it needs to be put into the hierarchy of things that government think are important.
This is obviously a very important year for the climate agenda. We're going to be seeing the climate conference at COP in Paris later this year. What do you think we need to see coming out of that, which is going to make oil company CEOs in particular really sit up and take note?
Well, first, I want to set expectations as low as possible so that we can overachieve at this COP rather than underachieve, which we've done in several COPs in the past. I think the thing that's going to move energy company CEOs is what other company CEOs are doing from other sectors. And there are a tremendous amount of activity going on outside the energy and mining sector. You know, retail, consumer goods, how to power data centers with far less electricity and cooling. There are plenty of things going on. And I think people are noticing this, that actually it is the minority of industries, they're very big industries, that are not beginning to participate in a very strong way. So I think that peer pressure will move things along, and I think that we'll begin to see some changes. And indeed, to be fair, there have been changes, it's just that they're not enough changes yet.
You're one of the signatories of the global Apollo program that has just been announced. Can you tell us a bit more about what it is and what it seeks to achieve, and also why is it being launched now?
So it's being launched now because this is the moment to get international attention on climate with COP and things like that. And this is a global program. We're looking for global coordination of R&D dollars to improve renewable energies, notably solar, but it won't stop there. And it's our belief that with the right amount of R&D, I mean, it's about 15 billion today, so it's a lot more, it's a factor of 10 over 10 years, that we need to apply to get real breakthroughs. And I believe that this is an area where R&D will make a very big difference. We've seen it in so many areas. There hasn't been enough investment yet, and someone, not just the private sector, has to take some of that risk. And again, it is a fit and proper role for the public sector to do.
Lord Browne, thank you very much indeed. That is Lord Browne of Madingley, the Executive Chairman of L1 Energy and former CEO of BP. That's all we've got time for today here at Climate TV. From everyone at the Climate Group, goodbye.